Hi my people, welcome back to my channel, A Gut Feeling. My name is Kat if you've never been here before, and my channel is usually all about spreading awareness about gastroparesis, a stomach disorder that I live with. Today I wanted to talk about something that kind of goes hand in hand with having a chronic illness, but also it's important to discuss, and also because this week from September 8th to September 14th is National Suicide Prevention Week. I'm not sure if it's just a day. When I looked it up on Google, it said that it was a week. Some people think it's the entire month. I wanted to be able to discuss suicide and depression because it is so prevalent in today's society. It's scary. And it honestly affects a lot of people that I love, and I have also suffered with depression and suicide ideations. Okay, so first I just wanted to give some basic facts about suicide. I got all of my facts from the World Health Organization, and this is for 2019. So close to 800,000 people die by suicide every year. That is one person every 40 seconds. Suicide is actually the second leading cause of death between the age ranges of 15 and 29. And for every suicide that is successful, there are many, many more who attempt suicide every year. I do not have a number of that because it's kind of a hard number to actually analyze and get a hard statistic from, since not everyone is going around saying, hey, I attempted suicide and I lived. So while there is a link between suicide and mental disorders, there's also many suicides that happen impulsively due to moments of crisis and just the inability to deal with life stresses, such as financial problems, breakups with relationships, and chronic pain and illness. In addition, things like disasters, physical abuse, mental abuse, losing someone in your life, sense of isolation. All of these are some reasons as to why someone might commit suicide. Suicide rates are also really high amongst minority groups and people who tend to be a little more vulnerable, like LGBTQ, refugees, indigenous people, prisoners, and by far the strongest risk factor for suicide is a previous suicide attempt. A few ways to prevent suicide that was given by the World Health Organization. One of the biggest things, and I've talked about it on here before, is a lot of us can't afford that proper help that we desperately need and want. It's too often that people say, I feel suicidal, or I want to kill myself, and people overlook it as that meaning nothing, or them exaggerating. So before I actually get into my own personal experiences with suicide and depression, I do want to put the suicide prevention hotline here down at the bottom of the screen for anyone that might need help, or if you know someone that might need help, please, please, please give them this number. Or even better, if you can be there for them. Because I'll be honest, I have called the suicide prevention hotline and was put on hold. And the fact that I was put on hold, it made my mental state so much worse in the moment, and I felt so much more isolated and alone that I actually just hung up, and I ended up self-mutilating that day. But that is the exact opposite of what you should do. There is only one hotline right now, and it's open 24/7, and there are so many people in need that it makes sense that they don't have enough people to keep up with everyone that needs help and that is calling in the moment. So even though I called and I didn't reach anybody in that moment, if I had just stayed on the phone, if I had just waited maybe a minute longer, somebody would have answered and somebody would have been able to help me. And I just want to reiterate that I did not handle it well. And they weren't my first resort either. I had tried texting and calling a few of my friends that just weren't able to answer, and that's not their fault. It's not their fault at all. I just want to make that clear. So really, if you need to talk to someone, please try that number. Alright, so I have struggled with depression since I was in middle school. I used to self-mutilate. If you don't know what that means, that basically means I would hurt myself. And it doesn't mean only cutting. It was just any way that I could hurt myself in the moment so that in a weird, fucked up way, I would feel better. One of the biggest things that I have read and that is in common with people that are self-mutilating is that they feel numb. They feel numb and they want to feel something else. They want to feel anything. Or, on the other end, they don't want to feel the emotional pain, but they'd much rather focus and feel the physical pain. Both of those options have been very true for me. There have been moments where I was numb, and then the majority of the moments, though, I was in so much emotional distress that I didn't want to think about it anymore. And I only wanted to focus on my physical pain. I actually started cutting as an outlet for what I was going through with my family. And without getting into the nitty-gritty of that, it just was not an easy family life. We had kind of a mixed, mashed up family, and it was really, really hard for me to cope with and understand. It's really hard to like get into it without getting into it. And I'm not really sure how much I want to divulge, like how much of my life do I really want, how much of my family's dirty secrets, dirty laundry do I really want to put out there. And not that it's dirty, I mean, maybe some of you have gone through it too, and that's why I want to share this as well. I know that some of you can relate, and I don't want you to feel alone like I did. Long story short, just to put it into layman's terms, basically, this is how an outsider would see it, is my dad was having an affair. And this woman and her family were living with us at the time. And we were all, even my mom, were trying to basically live happily as one big family unit. But that's not how people were treated, and it's not how it turned out. So I was going through that, and I was also dealing with my own identity crisis at the time, even in, you know, middle school, high school. Like I said, this started end of middle school, beginning of high school, and has continued with me since. I was also in a pretty toxic relationship at the time, and my coping mechanism and my outlet was to cut myself. Now, I've said suicide ideation before. If you guys don't know what that means, basically it means that you are thinking of it, and a lot. And you may not necessarily go through with it, you just have these thoughts, and sometimes there were times that they were almost constant. Every single day, multiple times a day. I would just bawl my eyes out, or I would just be numb, and all I would think about is how I should do it. When I lived in California for 2 years, I definitely struggled mentally. I felt very isolated and completely alone, especially after some really terrible run-ins with a couple directors and producers, which I put a video up on my other channel about why I quit acting and modeling, and those are a couple of the reasons why. I was pursuing this dream and I was being completely crushed. One day I got in a really terrible fight with my boyfriend at that time. Actually, I was the bad person in the scenario, and I had hurt my boyfriend so bad that I turned it around on myself and didn't want to feel terrible anymore for hurting him. So I took a bunch of pills. My cousin that I was living with at the time tried to have me throw up the pills. I stuck my finger down my throat. He tried pounding me on my back. It wouldn't come out. I was still so upset. I ended up calling the ambulance myself. And they picked me up and they drove me to the hospital, and I stayed there for, they didn't even have to pump my stomach. They basically sat and waited while I was there for I think maybe 4 or 5 hours. And they didn't have to pump my stomach, luckily. I was okay. I had taken a lot, but it was not enough for it to do any serious damage to me. Me and that boyfriend stayed together for a little while longer after that, surprisingly. It was toxic for both of us. Since then, I had not and have not attempted suicide. I was dealing with a lot of ideations, and I have had therapists and I've had psychologists before. The only therapist that actually helped me and I saw improvement was the therapist I saw out in California, actually. He was absolutely amazing. Really, really nice, really helpful, and we made some amazing progress with myself. I was really proud of myself and I was feeling pretty good. And then I got sick. Now, that doesn't mean to say that my depression went away all of a sudden because of therapy, but I got better, a lot better. And I was doing really well. Gosh, before I was sick, I feel like I was living my best life. I was dating somebody new. I was working for my dad. I was attempting to go to school to get my radiology degree. And yeah, and then I got sick, and it kind of, no, it didn't kind of, it uprooted my entire life, and it's changed it entirely. And living with a chronic illness, people do not talk about the mental toll it takes, and that's why I really like to discuss it on here. I've mentioned it before if you've watched my videos before. But being in chronic pain and being sick day in and day out has such a toll on you mentally. Especially when you have a gut disorder. Because scientifically, they say your gut is your second brain, and that's because a lot of neurotransmitters are actually produced and stored in your gut. So when your gut hurts, your brain hurts. When your brain hurts, your gut hurts. That's why you get butterflies in your stomach when you're anxious. Or when you're nervous, you get bubble guts. So now I am at a point where I don't have a therapist just because I've been through 3 or 4 ever since I've been back to Virginia. And some were very rude. Some dropped me altogether and ghosted me like a relationship. Some cost way too much. The psychologist I wanted to see was $300 per session. And that's with insurance, but the thing is, big kicker, a majority of psychologists do not take insurance, or they're out of your network. And so you're having to pay out of pocket their prices. Therapists are great and all, but they can't prescribe you medications and they cannot diagnose you. For the longest time, I did not take any medications. That's probably why I was coping by cutting myself. You know, the stigma around it definitely got to me. I had family members telling me, oh, well, you're anxious, everyone has anxiety. Oh, you're a little sad, everyone gets sad. Really invalidating statements by people that I really love and looked up to. And antidepressants aren't the be-all, end-all either. Believe me, there's trial and error. I have friends that, unfortunately, antidepressants don't work for them at all whatsoever. Sometimes it makes your depression even worse. So antidepressants, I totally get, are very scary, and I understand the stigma around them, but we need to end the stigma because people with that chemical imbalance need these medications to balance them out. The only reason I feel like I am actually stable now is I actually found me and my doctor found a combo of medications that works for me. And I'm not saying it's still not a struggle some days. There are some days that it's really, really hard. And I've noticed it's usually when I'm having a flare-up now is when I have my worst mental days as well. But I also want to talk about high-functioning depression, which a lot of people say isn't even a thing, but it is. And I'm so glad I found out about it, because for the longest time, I don't know, I thought maybe I was bipolar, or I was like manic, or I was maybe not even depressed, because there are days that, I mean, if you watch my videos, if you look at me, if we meet in person, you wouldn't even think that I had these ideas in my head, or that I've struggled and I've suffered myself with a lot of these things. I get up in the morning and I do the bare minimum that I need to do to get through my day and survive. And they call this high functioning depression because I'm still up and about. I'm still going out and doing things. I'm not, you know, laying in bed. I'm not sleeping all day. But the thing is when I can, I do. On the weekends, I sleep in really late. I take naps. I sleep way too much, but I honestly just love naps too. So basically, high functioning means you're still functioning. You're still going out and going about your day. Whereas there are other people that have depression that really can't even get out of bed. And believe me, there are days that I really feel like that, but I am so terrified of losing my job and failing my family that that's basically what gets me out of bed. Depression and suicide it's an epidemic. By the World Health Organization, it's an epidemic or pandemic. It's global. One person every 40 seconds dies by suicide. Think about that. Every 40 seconds. Anyways, I could talk on this topic for hours, literally, and I don't want this video to be crazy long. But I do think it's important to share my story and to at least open up the discussion. All those people who have died by suicide, for all those people who have attempted, who think about it, who suffer with depression and can't get out of their heads and can't get themselves out of the deep, deep hole that life loves to dig for us. Life is fucking hard. And not enough people know that this week, September 8th to the 14th is National Suicide Prevention Week. I actually didn't even know until one of you guys told me, so I really do appreciate that. I hope you guys liked this video. I know it's kind of weird, but I hope you guys liked me talking about this topic, and please don't forget to hit that thumbs up and subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you know every time I post. And I take any suggestions. If there's anything you guys want me to talk about, rant about, research, discuss, I'm all here for it. I love to talk, and I don't know what I'm doing now, but I hope to see you guys in the next vlog. Thanks for checking in with me.